So you hate your boss, or at least you hate working for your boss. Or maybe you really, really, really wish they'd do this one thing a little bit different so your working life would be a little bit better. Maybe they always have to provide feedback on your team's work, and it's causing you to miss deadlines because they aren't timely in their replies. Maybe they like to get information verbally and set lots of meetings, and your brain is like, this could have been done in an email. Maybe they're just toxic, and it's causing lots of emotional stress. We all have different working styles and personalities, but when your boss's style clashes with your own, that can at best make it harder for you to do your job, and at worst, demotivate you and your entire team. So what can you do about it? Should you manage up to make sure you can get stuff done? Can you convince your boss to change their working style to better match yours? And when should you throw in the towel and find yourself a new boss? Welcome to Manage This, a series for everyone playing manager in the middle. Each episode, we will help managers tackle everyday problems that seem to pop up when you're both leading a team and being managed in return. I'm your host, Mandy Gosling. Last episode, we offered up the Bad Bosses Recovery Guide, and this time around, we're flipping the script. How to thrive even when you hate your boss. You've probably heard the term managing up. At its most positive, some people define managing up as creating a positive environment for you and your boss to work, adapting to your boss's communication and management style so you can be the most effective employee you can be. But let's be real, most people think of managing up as how to, manage your boss so you can actually get stuff done. I had the chance to chat with Maja Djikic, an associate professor at the Rotman School of Management and psychologist who studies adult development and personality, particularly in the workplace. And she absolutely hates the term managing up. So tell me, why do you hate the term managing up?
So the reason why I don't like the term managing up is because it implies manipulation. So it implies that we are one way in one room with our boss, in a completely different way in a different room. It means that we suddenly turn ourselves into somebody who we are fundamentally not in order to produce a behavior. I think it's destructive to us because I think when we feel like we're managing up, as in we become a different person, there's a little bit of integrity that we lose.
And frankly, she says it's not great for your boss either.
We're being handled. And as leaders, we don't want to be handled. It means that people are afraid and we're not getting full information.
So let's start with putting aside this idea of managing up or up managing your boss. It's not helpful long-term, and no one really wins in the end. So what should you do if you feel your relationship with your boss isn't ideal? The first thing Maja suggests is to stop putting people into boxes.
If you find that you're not getting along with your boss, I think the first thing to do is to try to stop categorizing them. We have a tendency when we're not getting along with somebody, when we're not getting our needs met at work, to start basically calling people names. We call them toxic. This person is an extrovert or introvert or narcissist or passive. But unfortunately, it's not going to help us repair or maintain relationship with them, because implied in a category is that this is how they are across all aspects of their life. They're not going to change. No matter what you do, it's going to stay like this.
And look, we get it. A toxic boss can feel incredibly toxic. They can make it hard to come to work in the mornings or can erode your motivation to be a good boss yourself. But set aside those labels. Toxic, bad communicator, micromanager. It's just not helpful to this process. Next, it is time for some self-reflection. Maja suggests you start by writing down a list of what your needs and wants are.
Do you want to be appreciated? Do you want to be seen as somebody who has potential? Do you want something very specific like more feedback? Do you want more responsibility? There's a bunch of things you want.
Try to focus on what you need to be able to do your job well and what your boss might not be providing. Do you need more resources, longer timelines to finish projects, or fast approvals or feedback? Be thorough and honest with yourself. If a pat on the back for a job well done is important, put it on the list. If career advancement is something you need, write that down too. Next, Maja suggests writing down what you think your boss's needs and wants are. I mean, you're only guessing here, but it's helpful because it puts you in their state of mind. and it might be able to help you see where there's a mismatch with your own needs and wants. Can you give an example that illustrates this?
So let's say that you feel like you need more communication from your boss in order to get your work done. So you send them an email asking a question, and then you don't hear for 3 days. And let's say your boss is, answers only on, Thursdays. And you're very frustrated because you can't get anything done until Thursday, and then you're missing some deadlines and so on. Why does their way of communication win out over what seems to be a more functional way of communication? So rather think of it as, okay, I have a need in order to do my job. Here's my need. And then they have a need. Clearly, their need has to do something around Thursday when they have more time or whatever that is. And you need to start to filter it. Like, how do I get more information given that I know that they have a preference, a different kind of preference? And how can I have a conversation to try to bridge that gap if possible?
Next up, it's time to get real with yourself. Look over your own needs and wants list and start editing things out.
There's some things on that list that might not belong there. What do I mean by that? So let's say you have a need or want to be validated. But let's say that this is not just this boss. Let's say you've never felt validated at your work. And it's a continuous thing that this might have to do with a maybe inner dynamic of you rather than a relationship between you and them.
Essentially, look for patterns. Are you always feeling overworked no matter what job level or company you're at? Do you feel like your accomplishments are always being ignored? Do you always feel like you have to answer emails at all hours of the day and can never disconnect, even as you shift roles? If yes, perhaps it's not your boss. And now is a good time for a bit of self-reflection on why you're feeling overwhelmed or underappreciated. And side note, this is not to invalidate some very real systemic barriers some people, particularly women of color, face in being recognized in the workplace. That is a big issue, and one we hope to cover in a future episode.
So the question is, how do we deal with it? Do we have a history where we get activated when we're being ignored, or when somebody doesn't respond to us, or when somebody tries to control us? And that's the bit that we can work on ourselves, right?
Now that's time for self-reflection and self-work. And this video is all about thriving despite your relationship with your boss. So let us know in the comments if you want us to dive deeper into this topic in a later video. Next, look for what you can't control.
Usually there'll be things like, I want them to think that I am right, that I have potential. But usually it has to do with how they have to feel or think something, which, as we know in psychology, is not a good thing to want because it's not under your control.
You can't force your boss to feel a certain way about you, so scratch those things off your list. The final step for your critical review is to consider which of your needs and wants can be achieved elsewhere. Can you find more creativity at home? Is there a way to get validation from external peer groups? Basically, does your boss need to be the one providing you everything on your list for you to still thrive? Okay, now you've done your critical self-work. You've looked at your shortened needs list and your wants list, and you think you know your boss's needs and wants. The next step is to talk to them about meeting in the middle.
I think the magic word is, I've noticed that. So that conversation would look like something, hi, I've noticed that over the last while, you prefer if we send the emails on Thursday. However, I have this deadline on Tuesday, and I wonder, is there anything that we can do to organize it to still keep it easy for you to respond and yet for me to get this information on time?
Or maybe it's, I've noticed that you like to provide last-minute input on some projects my team is working on. Is there a way we might be able to shift deadlines around so that you have enough time to review things and we can make changes accordingly? Or, I've noticed that you seem to have lots of questions for me in meetings. Would it be helpful if I sent you a more detailed briefing doc beforehand that will hopefully address your questions? Now things are either going to go the way you wanted and the boss and you can come to some mutually agreeable solution. Yes, why don't you send me the details on Monday and I'll carve out a few hours of my afternoon to be able to respond. Or yes, let's add a 1-week buffer so I can give feedback. Or even, I can see you're under-resourced. Let's see if we can borrow a team member from another group to help you get through this crunch time. Now that's best case. Bad case, they do nothing. Their behavior continues unchanged, or worst case,
I couldn't care less about what you want. Get out of my face. Or something like that. Something that it basically entirely dismisses you. And so then there's an important question that you can ask yourself. What is it that I can do without their input, right, that I control? And are the things that I control important enough to me that I keep going? And this is what we mean by flourishing despite the boss. There's only one thing that we really need to be able to do at work for work to give us a sense of meaning, is that we need to be able to produce something meaningful and put it into the world. A lot of things about relationships are there to support this creative act. You might decide, my boss doesn't communicate the way I need, they don't support me, they don't give me feedback, and yet I have this space within which, with my team, right, within which I can do really good work, despite the fact that I don't get everything I want. And then it becomes a choice. Do I want to keep doing this and putting this into the world? Or do I need to look for a different place where I can contribute?
A couple quick caveats. First, one thing Maja says is that once people have made up their mind about your potential, i.e. how far you can go in your career, there is very little you can do to change their minds on that front.
So you can work really, 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 really hard, but it's almost like an inner construct that the boss has, like, this is just not the person that I see leading, I don't know, a department or whatever it is.
So if career advancement is important and you aren't getting that from your boss because they've decided you're at your ceiling or just aren't ready yet, then
making a move to a fresh set of minds might be a better strategy.
Second, don't do yourself psychological harm by staying in a job with a boss that's actively hurting you.
If you're experiencing every day a lot of negative emotion, it almost doesn't even matter whether it's you or it's them. I always say start with inner work and then change the situation if you still want after you're done with dealing with everything that you need to deal with internally, with the reconstructing, with reframing. But I understand that is not for everybody, that sometimes people say, let me change my boss, change my work, change my boss.
And of course, as a boss yourself, you can apply a lot of this to your own team dynamics. Be the boss you wish yours was, and talk to your team about what they want and need, what you want and need, and where you might find that middle ground.
First thing to do with your own team, if you have a toxic boss, right, is to know that you can't make your people flourish no matter what, because you have a set of constraints, and these constraints will always impact your people. So you might think that somehow you can make it up to them, but in the end there will be a set of constraints. And so the question is, what can you do? What is under your control that you can do to make them be able to satisfy what they want? Professionally, developmentally, creatively, in the workspace. In a sense, you behave in the way that your boss, who is not so good, doesn't, which is that you sit down and say, how can we make this easier? Is there a way that we can do this, that it's easier for you to bring us the best work possible and that you flourish as a professional, as a person?
So which of these steps do you think you'll try with your own boss? Will you sit down with your team and ask them for a needs and wants list? Are there other challenges you're facing as a manager that we should explore in a future episode? Weigh in the comments below and consider subscribing to this series, our whole YouTube channel, or the Rotman Insights Hub. Click the link in the description to get more thought leadership and research-backed management tips from the Rotman community. We'll see you next time.